This podcast is part of the Deluxe Edition Network. To find other great shows on the network, head over to deluxeeditionnetwork.com. That's deluxeeditionnetwork.com.
If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends talking nerdy.
This is the podcast making public transit tech and kiss stealing, wheeling, dealing, son of a gun, Tim the Nerd, welcoming you to another episode of Friends Talking Nerdy, part of the Deluxe Edition Network. Head to deluxeeditionnetwork.com to find out about all of the lovely shows on the Den. And seated next to me, we have the most electrifying professor in all of podcasting today, and I was able to drag that out through your yawn.
Yes.
We have Professor Aubrey. How you doing?
Hello. I'm very awake. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good.
How's your week been?
My week has been good. Yeah. The weather's been nice. Been just, spending time with people that I care about. And that's all one can really ask.
Nice. Now, I know one thing that is new that you care about now is something that we purchased.
Oh, yeah. So that was fun when we went down to the Play It Again music store and found a electric guitar to purchase. And so now we have an electric guitar and a little cute 70s amp and a cord, and so we can plug it in and play the electronic guitar.
Yes, very quietly, of course, but yeah, it's a nice little setup. The make and model of the guitar itself, it is an off-brand, not familiar with the manufacturer itself, but in terms of a physical description, it looks just like a generic version of a Fender.
Yes, and it was made by, it's a Yamaha brand. It's the Yamaha off-brand, so Yamaha's great.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of like Toshiba in a lot of way when it comes to computers. I mean, they're more known for other things. I think with Yamaha, they're more known for like their keyboards and pianos and stuff like that. But still, solid company. And of course, the speaker itself, a Dan Electro. Yeah, I mean, like I'm getting visions of basically the setup and the way it sounds. I could easily play at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance and play some Earth Angel with that particular guitar. I mean, it has that type of 50s electric guitar sound.
Yeah. It really does.
And I was able to, since the last time I complained about the guitar, I've been kind of practicing my finger moves as well, and I've gotten better at the transition from the G chord to the C.
Nice. Important transition, given the number of songs that are written with G, C, and D.
Yeah, I mean, I was able to play Wild Thing on the guitar, and that was pretty awesome.
Yep, so you could play a whole song.
Yep, play that, and I also did discover how to play the the opening part to the Sixpence None the Richer song, "Kiss Me."
Yeah, that's right, by accident.
Yeah, just C and, messing around with the C. You play the C like you normally would, and then once you go to the second chord, you just lift your index finger up and, play the two. I'm sure it's some sort of a variation of a C minor.
I'm sure it is too.
But what have your thoughts on the guitar? What have they been in the short time that we've had it?
I've really enjoyed playing with them in the amp. It's just fun to have an electric guitar that sounds different from my regular guitar, and I'm hoping that I learn to play it well.
Same here. Same here. I mean, you don't make the kind of investment you do in that guitar to let it sit and collect dust. We'll have plenty of stories, I think, over the coming days, months, years, and centuries as Friends Talking Nerdy keeps on going. I'm awfully optimistic about the success of this show.
Yes, but somebody's got to be.
I know, right? Anything else happening in your week here?
I'm getting ready to go on my Safety Northwest camping trip, which is where a bunch of people who volunteer at festivals get together to study incidents and incident command systems for if things happen at festivals, how to handle those things safety wise. So I've had to watch these really boring modules on the computer in order to get to the point I'm supposed to be at for the actual training, and that has been a bummer.
I can imagine a lot of those instructional videos or training videos for pretty much anything. It's like watching paint dry.
Yeah,
But
definitely watching paint dry. Yes.
yeah, but you, of course, I believe you've even mentioned this on the show before that you were going to this at some point earlier this year, or I just remember a conversation we had off the air. But the importance of this, of course, is that, as you've mentioned in the past, your ticket to Burning Man was through the volunteer program. So learning about stuff you could potentially encounter in that big of a setting as a volunteer is going to not only help you out, but, depending on the type of emergency that happens, could potentially help somebody else out too.
Yeah, well, that's the thought, how you keep yourself safe so that you can help other people stay safe.
Anything you're looking forward to when you go to this?
Just seeing everyone. It'll be the first sort of event of the festival season. So it'll be fun to see all the fellows and hang out with them a little bit. It's the first camp of the season as well, so that'll be a good test of all the gear we have from last year. Make sure it's all working correctly.
Yeah, you want to, especially for something that's going to be a little bit closer to home, I'm sure it's probably a little more convenient to be able to test that out instead of doing the multi-state trek to find out that, ooh, the whole tent had a little hole in it that I wasn't aware of.
Right.
Well, I, for one, am glad you are going to be able to take this excursion to be able to camp, enjoy some time outside, and also to learn about some new stuff, because then we'll have stories to tell in future episodes of Friends Talking Nerdy.
That's right.
All right, anything else you want to say about that?
No, nothing about that. I'll just also say that one thing is that is making me happy lately are these little kittens.
They are quite awesome, yeah. I've had the pleasure this weekend, as I have of every single weekend since we got them, of spending the weekend with them. And that is pretty awesome, but can be annoying at times too. But annoying in the sense of it's annoying in the moment, but it's those types of memories that, like, years down the road, you'll be like, oh, I miss them doing that. Like running up and down the hallways at 3 o'clock in the morning at full gallop.
You'll miss that. We'll talk about how they used to do that. How cute it was.
Yeah, now they just sleep all day. They don't do nothing. Do stuff. Yeah, we got Annie in hand at the moment as we record.
Yes, she gets into trouble.
Yes, she's the shenanigans girl. But I know you've been able to have a lot more quality time with the cats as well.
Have I?
Yeah, I mean, you spend a lot more physical time with them through the week than I do.
Oh, yes, I do, because I'm working at home. So I see them all day, every day. I observe their habits.
All right, they are amazing. Anyway, you know who else is amazing?
Who?
The wonderful people that listened to an older episode of Friends Talking Nerdy on YouTube Music, since Friends Talking Nerdy, the podcast, has officially made the switch from Google Podcast to YouTube Music.
Nice.
Yes, we've had comments on a couple of episodes, but the one episode that seems to be resonating with people so far is the BabyMetal episode. I believe that was episode 107, so going way, way back.
Yeah, way back.
Yeah, and I gotta say, I was really impressed with the fandom of that group. I mean, they came at the show with in terms of their comments. The ones that did comment to me, their comments were respectful, but they also ended up giving like deep histories of the Baby Metal band and its origins and everything. Like talking about like, we had conversations back and forth going about, how just because a band is manufactured, it doesn't mean the people involved don't have passion for the project. Like in this particular case, it's three young Japanese women that vocally sound like pop stars, sing like, pop, like you would expect, like, the only name reference I have is like a Britney Spears or Christina Aguilera type. But that's transposed with the fact that the music itself is speed metal. And it's the weirdest dichotomy, but I remember when I first listened to it in research for the show, I really enjoyed it because in a lot of ways it's what music's supposed to do, evolve. It's like somebody sat there and thought, what would I do if I had bubblegum pop and metal music and mixed it together? And it's those little experiments like that can lead to some interesting stuff in good ways and bad. But in this particular case, like they have a pretty strong U.S. fan base, despite not putting out songs that have lyrics in English.
Right. Very surprising.
Yeah.
I wonder if people could hear the lyrics in English, though, whether that would encourage them to listen to it or discourage them.
It's certainly possible, but again, you have Baby Metal fans that will come out of the woodwork to give you like complete histories. Like one of the responses was a track by track like summary of what the songs were about. Because when Kim the Geek and I originally recorded that episode, I mean, we were fully transparent of the fact that because the songs were in Japanese, we didn't understand necessarily what the message they were trying to give in the song. So it was nice having somebody, take the time out of their day to respond to us on YouTube with an explanation for these particular songs. So, when you have people coming at me like that in a very respectful way, I'm definitely gonna respond in kind. And it was nice having the little chats, and I hope that the people in question that did leave comments end up checking out more of the show. If they don't, they don't. That's fair too. I mean, because with podcasts, sometimes you will find some to where an episode or two you're going to love, but the rest is not really for you. But we got people checking us out, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's really exciting, actually.
I agree. And, that again, that is due to Google Podcast going away. I don't know how many people were using the Google Podcast platform to begin with, because a lot of times, that like the two big podcast providers are Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Right.
And there are other types of programs that you can get that you can download that essentially, will get the podcast information like from Apple too, like. Yeah, I don't know any off the top of my head or anything like that, but there are podcast aggregate apps out there where you can get it. But we're on YouTube Music.
Yes, we are. And yeah, unintended consequences.
We had people listening to a very old episode, and it's like I've talked about too how with all of the episodes I've done over the years, it is harder to listen to the really older episodes. Just because of how different, the show was recorded at that particular time compared to today. I mean, like we've always said, every time we've put an episode out, we've given it our best effort at that particular time with all the knowledge we had at our disposal at that particular time on what worked and what didn't. Something like this is always going to be ever evolving.
Right.
But it's still going back and listening to some of the older episodes. It's like, ew, I thought that was good. I should have edited more,
Yeah, I think that's pretty typical of anybody looking back on a creative project, though.
Fair enough. And to be clear, like when I say that, if there's anybody that could be listening now that were involved in any of those early episodes, I am not trying to discount the effort that everybody that has been on Friends Talking Nerdy has put into it, but I think it is a fair assessment to say some of the early episodes were done in ways that we wouldn't do it today.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but anyway, any other thoughts on BabyMetal or YouTube music or anything like that?
No.
No?
No, I think we've covered all of those items.
Well, okay then. Before we go to our main event, how about we send it to one of our friends at the Deluxe Edition Network?
That's a great idea. Let's do that.
All right, sit back, relax, and enjoy this message.
Since the beginning of cinematic time, which for these three dumb bastards is just about as long as they can remember. These men, moviegoers and enthusiasts, join in a simple yet common goal: to enjoy any and all feature presentations in the most enlightened state of mind. But for the few of us who seek an entirely different cinematic mentality, I give you your solution.
You ain't heard nothing yet. It's showtime, folks. It's showtime.
You fellas been doing a bit of boozing, have you? Sucking back on Grandpa's old cough medicine?
I had about a half a beer, but the dog had a lot.
I have a very particular set of skills. I was drunk. I'm drunk now.
It was the greatest beer in all the world. Once it hits your lips.
These men are literally intoxicated. This is their reality. These are real men, and this is real beer. I give you Jake, Matt, and Daniel of the Real Drunks Podcast.
Hey, Tim, before we get to our main event, would you like a cup of coffee?
Always. I live on that stuff.
Yeah?
Yeah. How do I get through the day otherwise? Caffeine, man.
Caffeine is the way.
Yeah.
I agree. You've got to have caffeine in order to make it through the day. That is for sure. So I have this new coffee I would love for you to try because I absolutely adore it. And you know, I have really good tasting coffee.
You most definitely do, folks.
Yeah, so I have this new coffee from Coffee Brothers Coffee Bros. And they are a small roaster in New York City that's run by two brothers, which is why they call themselves Coffee Bro.
Imagine that.
I know, right? Yeah. And they have this really great website that sells coffee that they make there in New York City, or they roast there. Sorry, they don't make it there. Obviously, they grow it in places where coffee grows.
Yeah, I don't think the South Bronx is a good place for coffee.
No.
In terms of growing coffee.
No, I think you have to be much closer to the equator.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, here, give it a try. What do you think?
Nom. So good, folks. So good. This is something I recommend we all try.
Yeah, okay. Well, you know, it's an award-winning coffee, and it's got really great blends, espresso roasts, and single origin coffees, which are all small batch roasted, you guys, in New York City. And we're in Portland, as you know, the home of amazing coffee. But for my coffee at home, I'm going to go for Coffee Bros.
And a reason I would go to Coffee Bros myself is because I love a good discount.
Oh my God. Yes, you do, Mr. Frugal.
Yes, if you go to their website, which you can go to our show description, and it will have a link there that will take you directly to their site, coffeebros.com. If you purchase some coffee from their website, and when it prompts you to put in the promo code, you put in FTN10, you're going to save 10% off of your order.
Wow, that's awesome.
It definitely is.
I hope everybody takes advantage of this wonderful opportunity to get 10% off this fabulous coffee.
I hope so too. Again, people, coffeebros.com. You can find a link in our show description, and at checkout, in the promo code area, put in FTN10. Let's drink some coffee, baby.
Okay.
Last week, we started a great discussion about the unique year in music that was 1991. Not only for reminiscing purposes, because the older you get, reminiscing, does release those, little brain chemicals that, thanks to stuff like neural nostalgia. I sound like an expert now talking about that, even though I just learned that term, But we wanted to finish up our thoughts on some of the unique albums that came out in 91. Mostly on the list, it's going to be stuff that at the very least, we can enjoy, as a one-hit wonder or something like that. But, we've also had some ones that we've talked bad about as well, like Mr. Michael Bolton.
Yes, Michael Bolton.
Yeah, just awful, awful, awful. And I'm sure he's probably in Vegas right now or something sleazy like that,
Spending that money.
Yeah, that our grandmas gave him. Well, how about I dive into another album?
Sounds great. What do we got?
We have from Heavy D and the Boys. They released the album Peaceful Journey that year, and the big song off of that was Now That We Found Love,
What are we gonna do
with this?
with it?
Great song. Great song. And I think on the one hand, hindsight being 2020, I mean, with hip hop as early in his infancy as it was at that particular time, Heavy D and the Boys, if you wanted to compare them to like a rock band, were probably like a band that came out in the late 50s, early 60s, in terms of time of reference, but it was also at a time in hip hop to where, at least the popular stuff, not like the underground or small label type of stuff, but stuff that would show up on MTV did have a little bit more variety at this particular point sonically, and it wasn't just the themes that ended up later in the decade kind of taking over, which were popularized by Dr. Dre with the Chronic album, which is a great album, but as happens in the music industry, when you have one album that hits big, all the other record companies want to make that same album as well, but they want to do it 100 times over with as many people as they can find to make their own version of that particular album.
Right, which is just sad, because if people like the first album, that does not mean they're going to like a second album that's similar.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd like a second album from that same artist.
Yeah, it's why most people today, if you walked up to the average person on the street and asked them who Jerry and the Pacemakers were, they're not going to know. That's not to say Jerry and the Pacemakers, who were, peers of the Beatles, and actually benefited from the Beatles giving them songs, but the Beatles did that with the Rolling Stones as well, folks. But, Jerry and the Pacemakers were always just that second act. They didn't come up with something that, made them really stand out. They were just trying to do the Beatles sound, but not as good, and not as good in the sense of finding that hook on something that would speak across time, because you could, like Pac-Man Fever, I believe, was a song in the 80s, but we're not talking about that now unless we're laughing at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on Heavy D and the Boys?
No, just a good romp. It's a good romp.
Definitely is. But the next one here is not. This is from a group called Color Me Bad off their album CMB. The big hit is I Want to Sex You Up. And one of the members of this band looks like Kenny G if he grew up in the hood. And two, the other members, all the members in this band look like that they were picked in a boardroom.
Yeah.
For this type of music, it's like, yeah, like they essentially hired, for lack of a better term, mechanics, people that could sing the songs and dance the songs, but these people didn't live the songs like a good musician does.
Or they didn't even understand the songs, probably.
Well, yeah, but we're also talking about I Want to Sex You Up, so it's not the most...
I want to sex you up. Yeah, but I enjoyed that song. Boo-doo-doo-doo-doo-doo.
Yeah,
good.
I don't remember that one, but yeah, let's just say they weren't making music for me.
No, they weren't.
All right, speaking of, we also have the next one here, someone who... by all accounts, maybe he's like a nice family person now, but just, I've never liked him. Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch. Music for the People. Two big hits, Good Vibrations and Wild Side, which took the riff from Walk from the Wild Side from Lou Reed.
Oh, uh-huh.
And this introduced us to Mark Wahlberg.
Marky Mark.
Yeah, just... ew. Like, now, to be fair, Good Vibrations, like, it's one of those songs that, like, if it's on somewhere, I don't necessarily mind. I'm not running to, like, a radio to try to turn it off or anything, but this was never, ever when I was ever going to search out on my own. Because why? It's just, I guess for, his brother, Donnie Wahlberg from New Kids on the Block, and it's another ew factor there. Like, he did this for his brother, Mark Wahlberg, because Mark at this particular time could have gone further to the dark side than he already did. And he already did something pretty damn horrible and been in jail before.
Yeah.
But, people could change and all that stuff. And I guess, this is one of the first things on his road to redemption or Hollywood mediocrity.
Yeah.
But any thoughts about Marky Mark?
Well, this is our first introduction to Marky Mark. Of course, he goes on to do many brilliant things, and I think has a better reputation perhaps now than he did at the time.
Yeah, just, I guess if anybody ever asked him, though, about his music career, he immediately shuts that conversation down. He doesn't want to talk about being Marky Mark or anything like that. So there's a part of me that would like to think that, like, he gets it too. And it's just like, it was a thing. He made his money off of it and was able to branch out and do other things that, spoke to him more than the music did. But just, ew. Like, it was better than Vanilla Ice, but not by much.
Wow, harsh.
Yeah. All right. I will go on to the next one here. And this is a truly unique album in a lot of ways. Like, we talked about how, Nevermind was that album in 91 that really hit it big and was a cultural shift. But, what I think I've been trying to do here with this particular list is show that there were a lot of other musicians that were just extremely different that were still grabbing the public's attention too, because people wanted that honesty. And another band is Metallica. They released the Black Album in 91, Enter Sandman, Sad But True, The Unforgiven, and their first ballad, Nothing Else Matters. I mean, and I've mentioned it too on the show before, like, a metal band was so popular in 91 that, they had their songs playing in dentist offices.
Yeah.
People were gravitating towards this music compared to the pre-polished stuff that was still getting put out, the very dying days of hair metal. But, just Metallica was different. So different, but they, the more you study them, the more you hear interviews with them and they talk about their musical influences, you see how much they are students of music as well. And, like, if Nirvana never existed, it might be Metallica that would be the band that kind of grabbed people's attention.
Wow.
Any thoughts on Metallica?
Well, I definitely was aware of Metallica at the time. They were very popular, played on MTV a lot. And I had a lot of guy friends in high school, young high school guy friends, who were so into Metallica, like freaking out into Metallica. So, I've always thought they were a decent band.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to proclaim that, they're my all-time favorite band either, but, they know how to make a music video. Let's put it that way. I mean, because before this album came out, the only other video they put out was from their previous album, Justice for All, the video for One. And just being able to go from One to Enter Sandman to Sad, but I mean, all the videos that they've made have kicked ass in some way, shape, or form. Like, they're one of the true MVPs of 1991 in music.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep. All right. I will go on to the next one here, and it's the debut album from a hip-hop group by the name of Cypress Hill from their self-titled album. The big hit off of that is How I Could Just Kill a Man.
How I Could Just Kill a Man. Yeah.
Yeah, here is something you can't understand. Yeah.
Gonna go kill a man.
Yeah, they are one hell of a hip-hop act, like my all-time favorite by no means, but they were again, like, just like in 90, in a lot of ways similar to a lot of the other artists. They were just different. You know, and I think the fact too that, you know, they were really the first ambassadors from our generation that talked about the positivity of marijuana too, in their particular songs, like to go from how people would snicker, you know, when they would talk about, you know, legalizing marijuana in the early 90s to walking into a weed store today and buying weed on their own, that, you know, maybe they help produce or something like that. I mean, these guys had a fair impact on our culture, I would say.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it was one of the coolest things about the early 90s culture were the new hip hop acts.
Indeed, because like similar to rock music, you know, like sonically, rock music in the 60s was so much more sophisticated than rock music in the 50s.
Right.
And, you know, similar to hip hop, you know, in the 80s compared to hip hop in the 90s, it was just like new things were happening. And also, too, this was a year or two after the Beastie Boys kind of went overboard on sampling and caused record labels to start being a little more strict about who could sample stuff in music or not, which did cause a kind of a change in how hip hop music was made, too.
Yeah, it seems like it would.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't just the traditional DJ with the, you know, records spinning them anymore. It was, you know, kind of, you know, other ways of being able to create that music. Now, you know, the beauty of hip hop, from what I'm discovering too, is how R&B and soul artists were a lot more embracing of hip hop, because one, it meant they were going to get some money, you know, for a particular sample being used. But two, it has ended up for fans of music, students of music that want to find out, you know, every little nuance of something. It's helped, you know, me certainly discover, you know, artists I wouldn't have given, you know, two thoughts for in the past. So,
like who?
Well, James Brown would be top of that list. I mean, I was familiar as a kid with stuff like "Living in America," his last big single, but I didn't, and I knew, of course, you know, his big hit, "I Feel Good." Oh, but he's had so many more. But
Yeah.
anyway, how about I move on to the next one?
Sounds good.
This is a group I kind of put in like the one-hit wonder category. I mean, the album in question from the Spin Doctors, Pocket Full of Kryptonite, did have a couple of big hits, Little Miss Can't Be Wrong and Two Princes. But, you know, when you have your lead singer have a sickness that ends up affecting his voice for a couple of years, to the point to where, one, they didn't know if they were going to be able to continue, but two, that puts you out of a commission for a couple of years, when if you are new, you really want to still be in the public eye.
Yeah.
So solid songs, but I was never a huge fan of this group. I mean, they were fun if it was on, you know, if the video was on MTV, I was going to watch it, but you know, I wasn't going to go out and buy one of their records.
Yeah, I mean, I remember this stuff being on the radio, heavy rotation, and I never really liked it, never really resonated with it.
I mean, the Black Crowes are doing it better, but even then, the Black Crowes were way too derivative of other bands from like the 70s. And that's the tough part about growing older, and why I find myself not necessarily liking newer bands. It's because I can hear what influenced those newer bands, and why would I want to hear their interpretation when I can still go to the original? I guess I'm stubborn like that.
Well, yeah, it's nice to hear other people's interpretations of classics.
It can be, if it's done right, with the right spirit. I mean, like Amy Winehouse, you know, I would say that's a perfect example of how to properly be influenced by the past while still carving your own spot in for the future, which sadly, she's another part of that 27 Club.
Yeah, that's sad.
Yeah. All right. Let's go on to the next one here. Naughty by Nature, more hip hop. This was a great year for hip hop. It was a self-titled album. The big hit off of this was OPP.
Who's down with OPP?
Yeah, you know me. I guess the main figure from that group was dating Queen Latifah at the time.
Oh.
So she helped facilitate them getting their record contract, and she actually appears in the video.
That's awesome.
Yep. So Her Highness was making an impact on culture even back then, but yeah, not a hip hop group that you hear people talking about much today. But I'm also admittedly not the biggest hip hop fan in the world, so maybe there are huge amounts of Naughty by Nature fans out there. But I think I think I'm safe in saying that they, along with the Spin Doctors, are probably have the same type of reputation among people. Just they were the '90s, and that's it.
Yeah, they didn't really last beyond the 90s, but some of it you go back, like you go back to Cypress Hill. Like some of these you definitely return to because the music was quality in the 90s and is now. But for a lot of them, like the ones you're mentioning now, they were of their time, you know?
Another one that was of its time was our next entrant on the list here. Guns N' Roses released Use Your Illusions Volume 1 and 2. The idea behind releasing them as two separate discs was that they wanted it to where people could buy Use Your Illusion 1, and if they liked it, they can buy number 2 later if they wanted to. They wanted to try and essentially save their fans money instead of releasing both as like a box set or a double disc or something like that. But the thing with the Use Your Illusion albums is that there's enough great tracks on both of them to make one really good album. And I wish they did that because for both of those albums, they did do extensive cover songs. Live and Let Die, Knocking on Heaven's Door, which is the first time I heard that song.
Really?
Yeah, the Guns N' Roses version.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah. Any thoughts on Use Your Illusion? I mean, for me, it has some good tracks, but a lot of it is just overproduced garbage. I mean, you have November Rain, Don't Cry, Yesterdays.
I mean, I think these were the moments, because having grown up in early teenage years with Guns N' Roses, the original album, Welcome to the Jungle, those types of songs, that this new stuff was so overproduced. It was like a different band, and I was not at all interested in listening to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, November Rain was just awful. There's a reason that band sputtered out the way they did, and it was just not sustainable. I mean, apparently, some of the members have reunited, like Slash, Duff McKagan, and Axl are in Guns N' Roses again, but Axl's the one who owns the Guns N' Roses IP, so essentially he's their boss.
Oh.
Which, if they're cool with it, whatever, great. But, I just don't see a time to where people really embrace Guns N' Roses again. I think it was just that first album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do too.
Yep. But someone who was not a flash in the pan, Mr. Ozzy Osbourne, came out with his classic No More Tears in 1991. This album, I would put it in the top 5 of his absolute best work, whether it be in Black Sabbath or his solo career. Not necessarily number 1, maybe in number 5. Compare, when you have like Paranoid, number 1, stuff like that. But this album is one of his absolute best. Has some great songs on there, some of them written by Lemmy from Motorhead, including the ballad Mama, I'm Coming Home. You have the title track, No More Tears, Hellraiser. Great songs throughout. And I think this album is the one that kind of made Ozzy finally accepted in the mainstream pop culture. He wasn't just that metal guy that scared people anymore.
That ate the rats off, or the heads off rats on stage.
Bats.
Bats, yes.
Yeah, because he thought it was a doll. Yeah, he's also a guy who pissed on the Alamo, too, and was banned from Texas for a while.
Nice.
Yeah. But any thoughts on this particular album?
Not beyond what we've already said.
Okay. Then I will go on to the next one, whose lead singer is from Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Hey.
We have the Red Hot Chili Peppers coming out with their seminal album, Blood Sugar Sex Magic. 2 big hits off of that are Give It Away and Under the Bridge. Yeah, this is the album that broke the Chili Peppers into, mainstream success. They'd had some dalliances before, but yeah, I think like in the late 80s, they were probably categorized like in the same vein as like an REM in terms of college kids will listen to this, but, not many other people will.
Right.
I think the Red Hot Chili Peppers are okay. They're not my favorite band, and I don't ever recall ever having, like, during this time of access that I've had to streaming, I've never put one of their songs on like a playlist or anything like that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, they were definitely different. That much is clear. And, 1991, people wanted different. They didn't want, the hair metal stuff anymore. They just wanted something unique. The unique thing was having Needles from Back to the Future 2 and 3. Needles was played by Flea. And the band is the bass player. I mean, just a unique band. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I definitely listened to Blood Sugar Sex Magic a lot when I was in high school. It was very cool. Everybody loved it. Like, it just had a wide following, like a uniting following for young teenagers.
Yeah, and then they became mellow, and I don't get the mellowness from them. Not much more to say about them. Let's move on to the next one here. The legendary hip-hop group A Tribe Called Quest released their classic The Low End Theory in 1991, which included the song Scenario. Here we go, yo.
Here we go, yo. So what's the scenario?
Q-Tip in that group. That's a Scenario song. I believe Busta Rhymes did a guest spot on it, and that was one of his first big entrance into mainstream pop culture, because he was a newcomer in the industry essentially at that particular point. But again, it showcases just how unique and different sounding hip hop was. The mass produced hip hop music in 91 compared to what you may hear today, for instance. And I do think, with them, kind of utilizing the more jazzy aspects, taking their samples from jazz artists, really says a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any thoughts on A Tribe Called Quest?
Love Tribe Called Quest. Love them. Hi, guys.
You're adorable.
You're super cute.
All right. We'll move on to the next one here. Public Enemy released an album called Apocalypse 91, The Enemy Strikes Black. The big hit off of that album was their duet with Anthrax, Bring the Noise.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yeah, it was at that particular time, I believe, the second biggest collaboration between a hip-hop and a rock artist. The first one, of course, being Aerosmith and Run DMC. Now, I don't know how Public Enemy would necessarily... I think... From what I've read with Public Enemy, I mean, they saw this as an opportunity to, kind of preach the gospel of what they were doing to a new group of people that wouldn't have necessarily checked them out. And, same with Anthrax, kind of putting their music out there to a group, to a consumer base out there that wasn't necessarily checking them out on their own.
Right.
And this kind of was a nice marriage between the two. But any thoughts on Public Enemy or Anthrax?
Love Public Enemy. Really into what they were doing in the early 90s. And Anthrax, I'm just not familiar with.
They were one of the big four, being Metallica, Megadeth, Anthrax, and Slayer. Because they all started in the same Northern California area with their bands and everything. So, are they? It's like me talking about, what I've told you about, like professional wrestling. When a person is wrestling famous and a person is famous. They're metal famous. They're not famous. Even though Scott Ian, the bass player, and who sang on the track "Bring the Noise," did stop into the Apple store one time, and he was really short.
Interesting.
Yeah, he walked into the store, and I can understand, having worked at the Apple store and seeing the few celebrities that I did, why you have companies that will hire like waiters in like Los Angeles and say, don't look at the stars. It's not that the stars themselves are any better or special than anybody else. It's just that people do have this instinct of being starstruck.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be hard to fight, because like you have this relationship, for lack of a better term, that you've created in this case with the musician by enjoying their music over the years, but they don't know you.
Right.
And sometimes it can be hard to kind of divorce that feeling when you are in a professional setting. So anyway, how about I go on?
Yeah, let's go on and see the next one.
The next one here, I haven't listened to this, but when I told you that this was going to be on the list, I know you said that there were songs on here that you enjoyed. From Prince and the New Power Generation, we have Diamonds and Pearls. The title track, of course, is one of the big hits. Cream is also another big hit off of that particular album. But I think you can speak more to Prince than I can.
Sure. This was a Prince sophomore effort. His big famous breakthrough album was Purple Rain, which I believe was in the late 80s.
84.
Or earlier than I thought, 84. So he had been around a while and making albums. This one, as you said, had some great songs on it, and songs that are famous ones for him even now. Cream, especially. Like, I just heard Cream on a radio station. Like, it's a popular song still. It maybe is an oldie at this point.
Yeah. But that's the thing with Prince, too. I mean, he made so much music over the years that, there are probably fans, that can listen to every single bit of music that he put out. But I think more often than not, you're going to have people that will kind of be with him for certain albums and then not so much for other ones. So, yeah, I don't have anything else more to say about that. How about we go on to the next one here? From a band in Seattle called Soundgarden, I got to high five the lead singer's statue at Mopop. From their album Bad Motorfinger, of course, again, Soundgarden, and the two big hits off of that are Outshined and a song covered by one Mr. Johnny Cash, Rusty Cage.
I've never heard either of those songs.
I mean, if you've heard the Johnny Cash American Recordings albums, then you've heard Rusty Cage at some point.
Oh, okay.
But that doesn't mean you recognize it right now. But I think if I played it for you, you'd be like, okay, it's that one. This is the album before Black Hole Sun. So,
okay.
Yeah, so Soundgarden had a presence in 91 because earlier in the year, and we did not talk about it last week, but earlier in the year, the Temple of the Dog album came out, which was the tribute to one of the members of Mudhoney who passed away or something like that, and Chris Cornell sang on that as well. So, like, people knew that Chris Cornell was a thing at this particular point, but they weren't huge yet. They were going to get there. Any thoughts on Soundgarden?
Well, we have been reminiscing about that kind of the grunge scene for a while now, and they were part of that, and so it's always bittersweet to talk about them and Chris Cornell and everything that happened there.
Yeah, because we've already discussed his sad ending as well. So, talking about another sad ending here, we have from Hammer, Too Legit to Quit.
Whoa.
Oh, man.
I'm so glad that it is way down on the list.
Yeah, it was released nearer the end of that particular year, and that was really MC Hammer's last big popular album. But even then, that's not, it didn't sell as much as the Pleased Hammer Don't Hurt 'Em album that had You Can't Touch This.
Yeah, You Can't Touch This was his obvious best song.
Yeah, and I loved the Rick James documentary when he talked about it, because he was like at first pissed off that Hammer did that until the royalty checks came in. Then he was like, "Sing it all you want, man." But Hammer just, I would even say he's on a level of a Vanilla Ice. Let's put it that way.
Really, that bad?
Just awful, the absolute worst thing for any type of music. Like he did for hip hop what Pat Boone did for rock and roll.
Wow.
And just awfulness all around. Even though, I've even shown some respect towards Pat Boone at one point, talking about that No More Mr. Nice Guy album he put out with the show tune covers of metal songs.
Wild.
Yeah. All right. Any other thoughts on the Hammer, or shall we just let him?
Let's let him
fade
languish there.
in obscurity. Okay, a couple more albums here to talk about. This one is the first album I ever bought from this group, and of the two, and I really liked this album. U2, Octone Baby. Not really the biggest U2 fan in the world, but when a band puts out a great album, they put out a great album, and you got to enjoy it. The big hits off of there, In Mysterious Ways, One, Even Better Than the Real Thing, are the big hits, but even some of the lesser known songs off that album are just damn good. And for as pretentious of a douchebag as Bono can be, like, for the type of music I like, this is like the closest they got to, making me a fan.
Right. That's the closest they got from losing me as a fan.
You liked more of their 80s
ballads and their 80s new wave sensibility, which they lost completely in the 90s.
Yeah. Oh, did I tell you the story about Bono's adventures in Grand Rapids?
No.
Yeah, I used to know a guy who was the drum tech for Bunny Carlos from Cheap Trick. And he mentioned how in the early 80s, U2 actually came to Grand Rapids at one point. I believe they played DeVos Hall or something like that. And DeVos Hall is like I believe they have about 5,000 seats. It's comparable to like the Schnitzer here in Portland, Oregon. That type of deal, because like the Broadway plays when they come to town, we'll play there. But they actually wanted to get something to eat at one point, and so they were brought to a side of town my grandmother lived in, and they went by this Italian restaurant, and Bono had a laugh because the place was Bono's restaurant.
Bono's Italian place.
And I've eaten there before, and it was an okay place, but... Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah, so I ate where Bono ate, maybe.
Maybe.
But any other thoughts on U2? I mean, I think, as you said, this is one where you started losing interest.
Yeah, I really did. In the Name of Love and Sunny Bloody Sunday, that was really the U2 that I appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff from Joshua Tree, the hits off of Joshua Tree, I enjoy. I would put them in the greatest hits category, but it kind of like, because they're like the Irish Bruce Springsteen in a lot of ways. Like, I don't get how they're popular enough to play stadiums. I never got that. To me, they were always seemed like the kind of band that was perfect for, at most, an NBA type of arena, but most importantly in, a smaller theater setting, because I think they'd be better, but just Bono just had to go big. Yay.
Go big or go home.
Yeah. Speaking of that, the last one on our list, from one Mr. Michael Jackson, Dangerous, had the songs Black or White and Remember the Time. This was the album that I guess you can really say was the start of the downslide of Michael Jackson's time in terms of being able to grab that music listener. I mean, sometimes with music artists, like the longer they go, any longtime musical artist will get to a point to where they're not relevant in the mainstream anymore. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you can still look at Paul McCartney, been putting out great albums, ever since he left the Beatles in the 70s. But in terms of him having an actual impact on pop culture, that probably died when, if not at the moment the Beatles died, or soon after. You know what I mean?
Do you think that's true for all of them?
I think that's true for most any musician. Like, look at the Rolling Stones today. Like, they're going through their victory lap right now more than anything. And they put out a decent album in Hackney Diamonds, but, I don't think that's one that, like a 16-year-old is going to grab that and be like, this is the greatest band ever, and I'm totally influenced by it. It's like, I'm talking about cultural relevance in more than anything else. Every artist has the rise and fall of the relevance, if that makes sense. Even Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
Anyway, decent songs off of that album. I mean, I've never been the biggest Michael Jackson fan, but when you make a good video, I can sit there and watch it. And I do remember watching Black and White. The video debuted on Fox. And it may have debuted on MTV as well, but I do remember specifically watching it at home on Fox, and then that 5-minute scene after the movie's done, after the song is done, to where like he's doing a dance, but a lot of it involves like doing hand gestures around his crotch that makes it look like he's like hitting his dick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that quickly went the way of the dodo in terms of repeat earrings. But that video was also had Slash playing guitar, and John Landis directed that just like he directed Thriller.
Wow.
Yeah, so the guy who I told you about the Twilight Zone movie incident, right?
Mm.
John Landis, the director of the Blues Brothers, directed one of the segments in that particular movie, and he was going to film a scene at 2:00 in the morning with explosions going off, and a helicopter going really low over a little creek bed, where an actor by the name of Vic Morrow and these two Vietnamese kids that were hired as extras were going to be going in through the lake, and he's trying to escape, but one of the explosions caused the helicopter to stop working. And it killed Vic Morrow and the two kids instantly. And there's footage of it.
Whoa.
Yeah. But Landis still got work. Hollywood in the 80s, folks, you could just kill somebody on a set that you were in charge of and still find work making stuff that still speaks to people today. 1991, people. Any thoughts on 91 in music?
It was worse than I remembered. Like, I thought it would be better than it was, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, like, you have some very seminal, some landmark albums that came out, including Nevermind. I mean, the reason we didn't talk about Nevermind is that if you go to episode 352, you will have us talking about the entire damn album there. But I think there was no... Even though Nirvana hit it big, people were still looking.
Yeah.
And people just wanted something different. And I think, it shows in the types of music that were out at that particular time. But I've had a good time reminiscing about music from that era.
Yeah, me too. It's been fun. Thanks for putting that together for us, Tim.
Indeed. And thank you for joining us, people at home. Any other thoughts you want to mention before we wrap it up?
Well, it's turning sunny and springtime around here, and I hope that's happening for you as well, and you're getting a little more energy, a little more pep in your step. I certainly am, and I hope you are too.
There we go. So, for the most electrifying professor in all of podcasting today, each Monday we'll have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
Farewell.
Too legit to quit. Biatch. Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy
on YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify,
or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Goodbye, darling.